All right, everybody, it is 1 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I know we still have some people coming into the webinar, and I will keep an eye on that. Some housekeeping before we get into the fun topic that we're going to talk about today. I have everybody muted, cameras off for right now. I am recording this webinar, so just be aware of that if you do choose to unmute yourself at any point. If you have questions while we're going, I have the chat up. So feel free to put questions in the chat and I will get to them as soon as I can. Occasionally when I do a screen share, which I'm going to do, the chat doesn't always pop up, but I will be checking them. And then at the very end, I'll give everybody, a chance to answer any questions you might still have lingering. We are going to post this whole show on YouTube, Facebook after it's done recording, so you can always refer back to that. And I can send out a PDF of the slides I'm going to use, so you can have access to any of it if you are curious or there's something you want to go back and review. So I am Rachel Felling. I probably should have started with that. I'm a naturalist with the Zionsville Parks and Recreation Department. I know some of the folks who signed up for this from other programs, and so if you're new, thank you for joining me. The fun thing about webinars is it doesn't have to be just people here in Zionsville. We can get some people from all over the place. And we are here today to talk about warblers. So this program is titled, What's That Warbler? I think it could also be titled Warblers 101. So if you are interested in birding, you probably, if you're now looking at warblers, you probably have some of the basics down already. You can identify your common backyard birds. You've seen some things out on the trail. You probably know more than the average person, but you want to up your game a little bit. And that's where warblers come in. Warblers are so much fun to watch, but they can leave you like, wait, what was that? Which one was it? I don't know. So that's what I hope to help you with a little bit today. So we're going to talk about what is and isn't a warbler, what you should be looking for when you're out there, when to be looking for them, why they're here right now, what's fun about them, and we're going to go through 20 of the most common ones. It's not an exhaustive list. There are more. There are 54 warblers that end up here in Indiana. Just passing through. Some of them stay and breed here, but a lot of them are just passing through. So don't get overwhelmed. And there's always going to be somebody that'll say, well, why didn't you include such and such? Or why did you include that one and not this one? And so I tried to go what I thought were the most common or the most commonly confused with other common ones. But again, not an exhaustive list, sort of a start. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to jump in and go through some of these fun warblers. We're going to talk about it. There we go. All right. So what's that warbler? Let's get into it. We have on the screen one of my favorites, a black Burnian warbler. We're going to talk more about him a little later today. So what is a warbler? What makes a warbler a warbler? How is it different than our other birds? So by definition, what is a warbler? It is in the family Parula. So this is as we think of scientists, ornithologists specifically, when we're talking about birds, classifying birds, we break them down by family, and warblers are all in what we call Parula. So it used to be that scientists just sort of put things together based on how they looked and acted. One of the cool things that's happened in the last 10 to 20 years is DNA evidence has shifted some of that. We are finding more specific things like, oh, this bird should actually be in this group and that bird should be in this group. And we didn't think these birds had anything in common, but when you look at their DNA, they are actually genetically similar. So when we talk about warblers now, we're talking about things that are all in this same genetic family. They are all have this DNA relationship. But then more specifically, how do they look? Well, they're usually small songbirds. Most of them are under about 6 inches. So picture a robin. That's usually my default, like picture a bird kind of bird to go to. A robin is decently sized, right? We're talking much smaller than a robin, okay? Warblers are little guys. Think like chickadee size maybe. They're mostly migratory, meaning they eat insects. They're not going to stick around central Indiana where we are through the winter. They're going to fly south for the winter and fly north. Some of them are going to stick around Indiana. They're going to breed here this summer and then leave again in the fall to migrate back south. Many of them, though, are actually continuing on into northern Canada and places like that far north of us. So that's a pretty cool thing that is about them. And a lot of them are brightly colored. And so on that note, today we are going to focus on the males in breeding plumage. Okay, so again, if we go back to that college course level analogy that I used, Warblers 101, 101 is males in breeding plumage. Talking about females as well would be that sort of course level 102. Okay, so and then if you want to get to warblers in their fall plumage where they're not breeding anymore, they're not as brightly colored, that's sort of your 200 level course. So we're sticking with the basics today. We are going to do males in breeding plumage, and that's just what we're going to cover because I don't want to overwhelm you and I don't want this webinar to be 3 hours long. So many are brightly colored. They often move quickly. One of the most common features of warblers is that they're not going to sit still. So people are like, I can't get a good look at it. Okay, so I'm going to give you some tips to make it a little easier. But that is one of the tough things about them is that warblers aren't going to sit and pose for you real pretty on the branch like this bird is in the picture. They're going to keep moving and you're going to have to keep up with them. It's a common thing called warbler neck because you've got your neck back, you're looking up, you've been holding your binoculars and you're like, ah, my neck hurts. But that's part of the joy of watching these little guys move through the trees. I said this earlier, 54 species in North America. Not all of them have warbler in their name, so that can throw it a little bit too, but a lot of them do. And a fun sort of interesting thing to end this slide with is that they are genetically distinct from the what we call old world warblers of Europe. So it's funny that we still talk about old world versus new world things, but a lot of these birds' common names come from when Europeans came over to North America, you know, a few hundred years ago, and they started looking and naming things. Obviously, the indigenous peoples of North America had names for things, but many of the common names that have stuck are those that were given from the European settlers. They were using birds that they knew from Europe and naming them after that, right? So they're like, well, these look like warblers, right? They sit in the tree, they sing, they warble. That's where the name comes from. But our warblers here in North America are genetically distinct from the warblers in Europe. They may have some similar characteristics and look similar, but they're a different family. So just a fun little thing to talk about. This picture right here is one of my favorites. It's hard to pick favorites sometimes, but American Redstarts are super adorable. We're going to talk about these guys again in a little bit, but he's fun. And all of the photos I'm using today are courtesy of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, an awesome website to help you go through, ID things, look through things as you go. So, all right, let's keep moving. So, come on, there we go. Key ID features. So, how do we identify a warbler? What are the things you want to look for, right? So we said that they're moving around quickly. They're probably sitting up in a tree. You're not going to get them to sit quietly and just, you know, be cooperative. They're going to be bopping around. So what should you look for? So here's my advice for you, especially if you're just getting started, you know, maybe you know one or two of them, maybe you know none of them, is watch the bird as long as you can, right? I don't tell people, look at it and then pull out your field guide. Look at it and then get out your phone. Watch it for as long as it will allow you to watch it and see what features are standing out to you. You might get a look at it for 1 second. You might get to look at it for 30 seconds from different angles. You never know. But what stands out immediately, look at those things, try to remember them. This is also where it helps to bird with somebody else, because you guys can, you know, even if that person doesn't know either, you guys can go back and forth like, oh, I saw this, oh, I saw this. And then, you know, you can sort of lean on each other a little bit. It is awesome to go out with somebody who knows what they're doing. But if don't let them just say, oh, that's a Cape May warbler. Have them say, well, why did you know that? How could you tell? So here are the things that I would advise you to look for. Color, right? The color is usually the thing that stands out the most initially, right? Habitat. Okay, was it in a tree in the middle of the forest? Were you in a prairie or a meadow habitat? Excuse me, were you near a stream or a pond, a wetland? These things can help you key it out as well, because some of the birds stick to some areas and some of them are, you know, more generalists that hop to different places. Excuse me. Okay, and then specifically on the bird, what we call wing bars. So if you look on the bird in this picture, this Cape May warbler, you will see what we call a white wing bar. That's that little stripe across the top of the wing, sort of near what would be the bird's shoulder, right here. Okay, some birds might have 2 wing bars, might just have 1, some might have none. Those are keys that can help you tell warblers apart. An eye stripe is something else that's good to look for. This guy's got a black eye stripe right through. He also has a sort of a brown rusty colored cheek. That's a super distinctive feature. Eye rings can be another one. This guy's got a little bit of a brighter yellow eye ring. We'll look at some others where the eye ring is definitely a good key ID feature. And then other distinctive markings. The head, the throat are 2 places to look for those colors. We would say that this guy has a black cap. He's got a yellow throat, and then you would notice the speckling down its chest. Those are all features that you can use to help you identify this bird. So will you get this guy to sit here long enough that you can get all those, write them down? Not always. I will say that this is one time that having a camera handy can be helpful. You know, I've rarely gotten a warbler close enough to get a good shot with an iPhone or a cell phone. But if you happen to have like a decent camera with a longer lens, you can always snap pictures, pull it up on a computer later, zoom it in, and then, you know, come up with some of those features a little bit better later after that. And then as far as how to ID, if you had no idea from the very beginning, you know, some of the things to start with would be your field guide. They've got them grouped. The warblers are all going to be together in your field guide. Another really awesome app that you can use on your phone that is free. Hopefully you guys all know about it if you are birders, but Merlin from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, MERLIN, is one of my very favorites. You can describe it and it'll give you some suggestions. You can put a picture of it and it'll give you some suggestions. You can even record the sounds and it'll give you some suggestions. We're not going to do warbler calls today because, again, that's a whole other level of class that would take a long time. But that can be your next level once you get some of the ID down. And some people do it by calls. I prefer to do visual. So that's what we're focusing on today. So let's get into, before we go into my 20 warblers we're going to cover today. Yeah, come on, computer. There we go. What's not a warbler? Just to make things confusing. So it is migration season. We are sort of, I don't know that we've peaked yet, but we are fully in migration season. Lots and lots and lots of birds moving through here. If you're in central Indiana, you've probably seen new ones. This is the time of year where some different stuff will show up even in your backyard. You know, you don't have to be out in a remote forest area somewhere or in a park. You can get crazy birds, I shouldn't use the word crazy, but more unusual, non-typical birds in your backyard, whether you have feeders or not. Some of these things will show up in very suburban areas, very surprising spots. So here are some birds that you could see right now that are sort of moving through that are not warblers. Doesn't mean they're not cool, but that might surprise you. But they're genetically distinct. Remember, it's that family Parula day. These are different family of birds. There's some fun ones to see here and talk about. So we'll just start with the upper left, the golden crown kinglet. They have a close relative called the ruby crown kinglets that are also around. I love kinglets. They are just like feisty little floof balls to me. Like they're so round. I think they're cute, but they are feisty. They will talk and they will yell. That that gold on the top, the ruby one looks similar, but it has a red color there. Isn't always obvious. They don't always show it. They can actually stand it up a little bit and put it back down when they get excited. But you'll see them bopping around. They're very tiny, little tiny beak or bill. And usually there's more than one of them in an area is what I have found. Moving across to the right, a white-eyed vireo. I think those two, the two white wing bars with the black in the middle and then the yellow is often what confuses people with warblers because a lot of our warblers have yellow, a lot of them have these wing bars. That white eye is the most distinctive feature. You look at him, it stands out. He has a white eye. So if you see a bird with a white eye, odds are it's a white-eyed vireo. I haven't seen any of these in Zionsville this year. I was just a couple weeks ago down in coastal Alabama and saw like a whole park full of these guys. They're fun to watch, fun to listen to. To the right, in the top right corner, one of my very favorite birds ever, the blue-gray gnatcatcher. The males have that like eyebrow that, to me, not to anthropomorphize too much, but makes them look like a grumpy guy. He's got a white eye ring. So right when we're talking about these things that stand out, the distinctive features, the white eye ring, that eyebrow, and they are kind of a bluish gray color, almost like a slate is what I would compare it to. Again, usually there's more than one of them in an area. They make this kind of buzzy call. I can't replicate it well, so I'm not going to try. I saw probably 10 of these in Starkey Park here in Zionsville just yesterday. So they are definitely in abundance at the moment. They'll stick around for a couple days to a couple weeks, and then we won't see them anymore. Bottom left, scarlet tanager, one of the most striking birds around, that dark black wing and red body. This one's kind of a reddish orange color. I think that usually I see them as more of a crimson, almost an IU red. They're so beautiful. I saw a couple of these guys at Starkey Park yesterday as well. So they are moving through. Some of them will stick around through the summer as well. Gosh, they're gorgeous. A red-eyed vireo. So we talked about the white-eyed vireo. Here's a red-eyed vireo. That red eye, again, very, very distinct, but then that white eyebrow will sometimes throw people. They're kind of an olivey color. I have not seen one of these this year yet either, but they'll hang out through the summer. They sing a lot, so I'll hear them more than I see them because they hang up the very tippy tops of the trees. The Zion Nature Sanctuary is a good place to find a red-eyed vireo here in Zionsville. And then last but not least in the corner, this is my son who is 9 and is a budding birder. His favorite bird is the indigo bunting. And if you ask me, there's not a prettier blue in this world than the blue of an indigo bunting. And I just had one of these show up to my feeder yesterday. Some of them will stick through the summer, some of them will keep moving on, but these guys I see all around Zionsville, often around the edges of the woods, but in the woods as well. And they do this like hee hee me me see see call. So kind of a descending call. They're really fun to watch. So all these are fun birds that are moving through. They're not warblers. Makes things a little confusing, but I want to mention them because they're fun and they're cool and you might see them, and you know, who cares if you're going looking for warblers and you see other stuff. It's about going out and experiencing the birds, seeing them in their habitat, appreciating them. So, you know, who cares which family they're in? You're still seeing something cool. So, but let's get into the warblers. We're going to do 20. Again, if you guys have questions as we're going, you know, it's real easy to just keep talking when you're in my seat. Throw them in the chat and I will be happy to answer, and we can do more questions at the end. So let's start with the basic warbler. If you can identify one warbler, I hope it's this guy. One of the most common warblers we have around. These guys will show up in the suburban backyard. You'll see them in the forests, but they're all over the place. I haven't seen as many of them this spring as I have in previous springs, but I know they're coming. This is the yellow-rumped warbler. And as we go through these warblers, here is what I'm tasking you all who are trying to learn this. As soon as I bring it on the screen, so let me click away from it for a second, back to the screen. As soon as I bring it up, I want you to take 2 seconds to see what are the most distinctive features that you noticed. Ready? What stands out immediately? Think about it. etch it into your brain, because that might be all the length of time that you get to see this bird before it flies away out of your eye line or behind a tree, or who knows what happens and you don't get to see it anymore. Okay. So for this guy, he is called yellow rumped. So it might depend on the angle that you see it from. This picture does not show his yellow rump super well. You can see a little peek of it, but they get their name because they have a yellow patch on their rump right at the top of their tail, which also helps them earn the nickname of Butterbutt, which also is my son's favorite thing in the whole world, as you can imagine. Butterbutts. But I actually don't think that's the most distinctive thing about them. When I see this bird, unless you're only seeing it from the behind, which does happen sometimes, I think it's those yellow patches on the sides of its chest. I describe it as its armpits. Okay, it's got those on both sides. Those stand out really well. The other thing I notice is the white throat and the black on the eye. It has a little bit of an eye ring on the bottom. It doesn't, I shouldn't say ring because it doesn't go all the way around. It has white eye stripe just above the eye. But if I only saw this bird for 2 seconds, I'm going to see those yellow patches in the armpits. I'm going to see that white throat and black mask. And with that, you could probably narrow it down. The yellow on the head, you can see it in this picture. Sometimes you'll be able to see it when they're moving around. Again, depends on the angle. If you're looking up at this bird, you may not see the top of its head. So those are the things to look for on the yellow rumped warbler. Again, super common. But let's now take a look at a bird that has a lot of physical similarities to our yellow rumped warbler, but is completely different. So I'm going to flash it. When you think about it for 2 seconds, what is the most distinctive thing you notice? Okay, this is the yellow-throated warbler. Yellow-rumped warbler, yellow-throated warbler. So the yellow-throated warbler, sometimes our ornithology people of the past were really good at naming the birds based on their most common thing. There are some examples where they were not, but this one I think they got right. The yellow throat is the very first thing I'm going to notice. The eyes, right? We've got some black around the eyes, a black mask, a little bit of white under the eye, a white eyebrow. It does have a longer bill than other warblers. Are you going to look at it long enough that you get to see that? Maybe, maybe not though. So let's compare the two again. Our yellow rumped has a white throat. This guy's got a yellow throat, but their eye masks are somewhat similar. So it could throw you. But if you see that big yellow throat, that's a good key to look for. We're going to see another one in a minute that's going to add some confusion, but let's talk about our yellow-throated warbler for a moment. These guys like to sing. I cannot do the call, so I'm not going to try, but they like to sing. I'll sometimes hear them before I see them. I was actually sitting at a Little League game last weekend listening to one of these calling in the trees next to us. Never saw it, but I heard it, and so the whole time I'm like listening and watching. You know, always be birding. That's my kind of my motto in life. I'm always birding. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm always birding if I'm outside, sometimes even from inside. But the yellow throat is a fun one. They're here in numbers right now. People are seeing them. People are hearing them. They're all over Zionsville and Central Indiana. They showed up last week. They may not stick around too much longer, but they've been around. Okay, so let's look at another confusing one. Ready? All right. Ooh, somebody's got a question in the chat. Hold on. Let me take a look at it. They love sycamore trees. I love that addition. Yeah, they sure do. They love sycamore trees, and they like along water is where I see them, which is where you get sycamore trees a lot. Common yellow throat. Okay, so remember when I told you about the people who name birds? Sometimes I like what they do. Sometimes I really don't like what they do at all. And if we wanted to be super fancy, we'd do scientific names, but nobody's got time for that today. So even though these two look very different, I confuse them based on the name every once in a while. Yellow-throated warbler, common yellow throat. Common yellow throat does not have warbler in his name, but he is a warbler. Now, this guy flashes on the screen. There are some very distinctive features, right? They look very different. Names are similar, but look, yellow from the throat all the way down the chest to the belly, but that big black eye mask. It's nice and thick. It covers the eye over the top down to the bottom across to the bill. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. These guys do a lot of singing as well. If you've got the word common in your name, probably a decent chance that you can find one. I have heard these guys. I heard them at Turkey Park yesterday. I did not spot one, but they are around. I have in past years seen them just sitting on the edge of a forested area, singing their hearts out. Very good common one. You might see one. I have actually had these guys visit my feeders in past years. A lot of these warblers aren't going to visit your bird feeders because they're not eating seeds. At least not primarily, not usually. There's always an exception, like some of your other backyard birds. So the best way to attract warblers is to plant native plants where bugs are going to lay eggs, because a lot of bugs will only lay eggs on certain plants and they need the native ones, and then you'll get the birds. So it's all kind of a nice chain there. Plant the plants and the rest of the ecosystem will show. All right, so that's our common yellow throat. Let's go to one more. Oh gosh. So the next one I'm going to do, I shouldn't have showed you. I should have remembered what was coming next. Is not the most common around here, but he's confused with this one. The common yellow throat, and then kind of his inverse, the hooded warbler. These guys are cute. Not super duper common, but they are around. There's a chance you could see them. The hooded warbler is almost the inverse of the common yellow throat. So this guy's got yellow on the bottom, black across the eyes. Hooded warbler's got yellow across the eyes, and then the hooded name comes from back top, and then the chin as if he's got like a hoodie on and he's all hunched down in there. They are super cute. They're almost like a greenish yellow and olive color across the back. But those are those distinctive features. Again, you see the bird for 1 or 2 seconds, you just get a flash. What stood out, you know, write it down, say it out loud to the person that you're with. If you're with someone, just try to remember it, watch the bird for as long as you can, and then pull out your field guide or pull out Merlin and see what you can find. All right, shall we look at some more? Let's see what else we've got here. Yellow warbler. So you can see that we're kind of going through the guys with a lot of yellow in them at first, and then we'll move to some of the other colors as we go. I love yellow warblers. I think they are gorgeous. They are mostly yellow, but they have those slight brown streaks on their chest. It's not super dark or distinct streaking, but just sort of like little splotchy colors. So obviously you see this bird for a half second. I think the strong yellow is going to stand out the most. There's another one that we're going to look at that has a lot of yellow as well, but we'll talk about some of the key differences. This picture doesn't show us a ton of the wing, but the wing has some yellow throughout, and the eyes are distinct and black, almost like a mousy black eye, like a tufted titmouse, dark black, round, no eye ring around it. Again, bright yellow, and then that brown speckling streaking on their chest, or what I would look for. So cute. Love these guys. Palm warbler. Let's look at this one. All right. Just looking at it as a flash, what stands out to me? Yes, I see the yellow, but I also see that brown cap, or what some people would call chestnut colored, I think is how it's usually described if you're reading it in a field guide. It's sort of a reddish brown, a rusty brown, really, really pretty. Kind of looks, to me, I always think it looks like a little toupee on the top of his head. But then, so you've got that distinct brown, and then you have the yellow eyebrow, and then yellow all the way down, okay? And again, guys, don't feel like you have to memorize this stuff. Don't feel like you need to know them all as soon as you're going out and looking for them. You can always go back and look them up. I have been birding for a long time. There are a lot of these that I still have to look up every time. That's okay, especially because we only see these birds for a little bit each year. If they stuck around all summer, it would be easier to learn them. But when you only get a chance to spot them for a few weeks out of each year, it can be hard to memorize them. So don't fault yourself for that if it's tough. All right, Prothonotary Warbler. I love, love, love Prothonotary Warblers. One of my absolute favorites. So I'm going to hop back 2 slides to our yellow warbler. Here's my other one that is super distinctly yellow. Prothonotary Warbler. And it's just a fun name to say too. that bright yellow stands out so much. But you'll notice no speckled streaks on the chest like our yellow warbler has. Okay, this guy, the palm warbler, has some of that yellow streaking or dark streaking. But the Prothonotary is bright yellow and his wings are gray colored, right? So more gray, almost black down towards the tips and on the tail, but that yellow belly, yellow head. See these guys around wetlands. If you want to take a little road trip, for those of you who are in the Indy area, one of my favorite places to go birding every year is Bean Blossom Bottoms, which is just outside of Bloomington. It is a Sycamore Land Trust property. I was there last year, first or second week of May, and I must have seen 20 of these. It's a great spot to do some birding and herping if you're into reptiles and amphibians, and just a fun place to go for a hike because it's a great wetland. So that's a good spot to see a Prothonotary warbler, is near wetlands. All right, let's keep going. Oh, one of the most beautiful songs around is the Northern Parula. So again, no warbler in the name, but he is a warbler. So what are the distinctive features we notice about this bird when you first look at him? To me, what stands out, I see the yellow right on the chin, I see yellow on the chest, but then you've got that streaking right there. Right? We call it a chestnut, or even almost, I think if you looked at it real close, it's going to be chestnut. From a distance, it might just look black, but a little streak across the chest. The head is mostly all one color, and it's kind of a gray, almost slate with a little bit of blue, that bluish gray mixed color on the head, a little bit of white on the eyes, has 2 white wing bars. The white is around the eye, but not a full circle. Parulas have a beautiful song. Again, I can't do this one, so I'm not going to do it. But they are known for singing. They're one of the birds that you might hear before you see it. They are gorgeous, and they're not usually quiet. That's a key for them as well. They are not going to just sit still and be quiet. They're going to sing. So, Northern Parula. All right, who's confused? Are we confused yet? Let's keep going. Oh, this is my favorite. The most striking colors. I've only seen one of these once, but I love them. They're not the most common of the warblers, but one of my absolute favorites, so I had to include them. A black Burnian warbler. Black Burnian is just like a fun name to say. But the colors, right, that distinct, what is the first thing I notice about this bird is you have the contrast of the black, the white, and then the yellowish orange. It's almost like you can see it goes from a darker orange here to almost a yellow towards the top, and the streaking in between. It's like a fiery color to me. So bright orange on that face, on the chin, but with the distinct stripes on the face. And you'll see that triangular patch around the eye down towards the bottom, almost like a triangle back behind its eye. They'll stay up high. They're not the most common to see. The only place I've seen one is Celery Bog in West Lafayette. Is a good place to go see some warblers. They've got some streaking across their chest. They are absolutely the most stunning bird to see. So I hope you all get a chance to find a black Burnian at some point. Magnolia Warbler, so some similarities to our black Burnian, right? But more yellow. Look at those yellow and black stripes. If I had this bird pop by me, I think the very first thing I would notice is the yellow chin and black and yellow chest. Maybe if I got a good enough look at it for long enough, I would remember that it also had that black eye mask and the gray cap. If you've got a long time to look at it, you might notice that it also has a white eyebrow. White around the eyes, but not a full circle. You'll see this described in field guides as a necklace around its neck, right? It almost looks like it comes right under its chin. So this is a Magnolia Warbler. These guys are around. We've seen these guys in Zionsville. Really, really pretty little guy. Oh, I just saw these yesterday. I talked about it earlier. This is the American Redstart. I think that just sort of in my own anecdotal experience, a redstart will hang around people more than some of the other warblers. They don't seem to be scared off by crowds. I've seen them on like very busy trails, just bopping around the sides and the trees, doing their thing. So the Redstarts and the females are striking too. Their colors are more muted, but they are still gorgeous. So mostly black on the head, chest, and wings. You might see the orange color and think Baltimore Oriole, or excuse me, Northern Oriole, Baltimore Oriole. But they're not nearly as big as an Oriole. You've got the orange there. They have this tail that they will fan out. You might see it described in a field guide as an expressive tail. They'll fly around and then they'll land and they'll open that tail, close it again, and open the tail, close it again. So they move the tail a lot. So that's one of those key things. And it's like, well, that is something that this bird's doing that not a lot of other birds are doing that you can keep an eye on. So I see these guys, we'll see them this time of year, and then some of them will stick around through the summer. Saw them at Starkey Park yesterday. They're a really fun one. I get them in the woods behind my house too. So not necessarily at your bird feeders, but not afraid to be in a more suburban area. They're really, really fun to watch. Okay. Getting away from some of the bright colors. And now I have our black and white warbler. So the black and white warbler, I think, is very stunning. So again, you just see it for a second, what stands out? You're probably going to be like, well, that warbler is a zebra. You know, it's the black and white. This one is well named for who he is. Lots of black and white stripes. We're going to look at another one that's a bit similar in a minute. Very distinctive black and white stripes. It's got a triangle shape near the eye, a slightly curved bill, but good luck seeing that if you see one of these guys out and about, because he's not going to sit still enough for you to see that. Really, really pretty guy. So then let's look at somebody else that this one's often confused for. A black pole warbler. So black and white, again, are the key colors, but let's pop back to our black and white. You see the stripes are really distinctive on the chest and on the head. The black pole warbler has some streaking and stripes, but not zebra-y. I just can't help but compare the black and white warbler to a zebra. Whereas the black pole warbler, to me, is confusing for another backyard bird, which is a chickadee, right? It's got that black cap on its head. White under the eyes, some similarity to a chickadee, but the streaking is what's going to help distinguish it from a chickadee. Notice that the black cap comes all the way down over the eye. It's not just on the top of its head like a toupee, like some of the other birds we've looked at, but all the way down under the eye. White cheeks, a big white streak right under the eye. The orange legs are a good distinguishing quality. We haven't talked too much about leg color, but if you want to get down into the nitty gritty, those things can help you distinguish it as well. A white body with some black streaks. So again, the black and white warbler, you know, you look at them side by side like this, you can see the differences. All right, Chestnut Sided Warbler. So this guy I think is really cool. You see it for just a second, what's distinctive? So to me, that yellow on the head is going to stand out first. If you get a good look from the right angle, you might see those chestnut sides. So like we talked about with the yellow rumped warbler, who had the yellow right at the sides of those wings, like I like to describe it as its armpits. Chestnut sided has chestnut patches, chestnut colored, right? Sort of a rusty brown color. This guy has a black triangle in front of the eyes with a white chin and then that yellow cap. And remember how we said this guy's cap went down over his eyes? You can see the difference here. Excuse me, with the Chestnut Sided Warbler, it does not. It has that black streak across the eye. It comes down to a triangle in front of the eye. Not to be confused with the bay-breasted warbler. So here we're heading into some of these birds that have some of this chestnut color in them. So there's the chestnut sided. You see a whole bunch of that chestnut or rusty brown color. You could be looking at a bay-breasted. I have not seen one of these in real life. So doesn't mean they're not here. I just have not been lucky enough to see one yet. So he's got a rusty cap, a little bit of brown on the top. Not a super distinct line between the rust and the black, but you can see it. And then that rusty color continues from the chin down the chest. 2 white wing bars. So remember we said earlier that wing bars can help you identify them. So those are those white stripes. And they've got a little bit of a cream color almost at the back of the head behind that black mask. Cape May Warbler, we saw this picture earlier. So we're looking at these rusty colored birds. His rusty color is just under his eyes. See a lot of that yellow. One of the things I think that is most distinct about this is that yellow goes all the way around the back from the chin, almost like a, not a necklace because it's thicker than that, like a neck warmer or something, a scarf. And then a black cap, black streaking down the belly. It's almost like a speckly color too in the middle, not it's streaks and speckly. It's one white wing bar. So other things to notice about the Cape May Warbler. Cape May, New Jersey is an awesome birding location on the East Coast. A lot of birds move through there. I assume that he got its name for being common there. All right, black-throated green. We're into our last few that we're going to talk about today. The black-throated green warbler. This is one of those ones that I don't like the way it's named. The black throat, I get, very distinctive when you see it. Green, I don't know. They are kind of an olive-ish color, that mix of yellow and black that shows up kind of olivey green. But to be honest, when I have seen them, they don't look very green to me. But the thing to remember is that a lot of these birds' common names were given to them after people looked at them, shot them, and were like looking at them up close like this. So it's easier to get really distinctive about things like those colors. I think the same thing every time I look at the red-bellied woodpecker, because I'm like, you don't really have a red belly. Maybe there's some reddish color in there, but that is not what I would have named that bird. But again, common names, not scientific names. But that black throat is your distinctive thing to look for here, really dark black. There is a faint eyes or stripe across the eye, a yellow mask that goes across, 2 white wing bars. These guys are common. I have not seen any this year yet, but you will see them in the parks around town. Now, black-throated green, black-throated blue, black-throated green, black-throated blue. Very similar names. These two birds look very different, but tongue twisters. I think they're a tongue twister. Black-throated blue warbler. These guys are so cool. I love seeing them. That again, that blue, almost with a tinge of gray. They're more blue than some of the others that we've looked at. The black throat, but it doesn't just contain to the throat. We go all the way up over the mask or the eye, a white belly. Funny enough, I had one of these visit my oriole feeder last spring, which I was really excited to see. You look out expecting an oriole, and I was like, what is that? And it took me a second. I was like, is that a black-throated blue? That doesn't seem right, but it sure was. So these guys are really fun to see. Really, really distinctive color markings that make them fairly easy to identify. Black-throated blue. All right, we've got a couple of our kind of brown streaky guys to end with. Ovenbird. I'll be honest, I didn't realize an ovenbird was a warbler. Did not realize they were in the same family. To me, an ovenbird is comparable to a wood thrush or some of the other thrushes, but they are a warbler. They are in the warbler family. They're small. They're smaller than a wood thrush, but a similar color. People, I have seen them described as olive. I personally think they're more of a tan or brownish color, but distinctive streaking. Look at that eye ring, white eye ring. We talked about eye rings earlier. This one's really distinctive, and those eyes are huge, big ol' eyes. The orange on top of the head, it's sort of like a mohawk. If you get a chance to see that, that is your key ID feature. You're like, oh, it's an ovenbird. But I have not always seen that when I've seen these. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I've seen this bird in Starkey Park, not this year, but I have seen it around. They'll hop around. He really threw me for a loop the first time I saw him. So I was like, what are you? You're not a wood thrush. So I'm hopping around on the ground. But yes, this is the ovenbird. I have no idea how it got its name. A weird name. All right. Northern water thrush. So there's two kinds of water thrushes that we could potentially have around here. Northern water thrush is this one. Louisiana is pretty similar. If you can get down to water thrush, you're pretty good. White eyebrow, dark streak through the middle of the eye, light brown, gray streaking on the chest. These guys like wet areas and they like to sing. We have actually had several Louisiana water thrushes in the area over the last couple weeks. I was surprised by it at first, but I've seen and heard them in both the Zion Nature Sanctuary and Starkey Park here in Zionsville. So if you've got an area that's got a wetland nearby, you've got a chance of finding one of these right now. So it's a water thrush. And the thrush is in the name. It is not a thrush, it is a warbler. Thanks, bird naming people. Thanks for making things confusing. All right, so I went over a lot. There's a ton here. I don't expect you to have these memorized, but these are some basic key ID features to look for. Where to find warblers. I could have given you 20 places to find warblers because in reality, there are a lot of places to look for them. If you're here in Central Indiana, these are my 3 personal favorites. So certainly not all encompassing. Here in Zionsville, Starkey Park is hands down my favorite spot, the best spot to look. A really, really wide variety of not just warblers, but birds in general. I've probably checked off more species there than anywhere else here in the town of Zionsville. Our neighbors just to the south, Eagle Creek Park is a great place to go look for birds, especially warblers. There's a few good trails. The folks at the Ornithology Center are awesome resources for giving you some tips. But the trail around the dam is a really good place to look. Excuse me. And then if you want to take a little road trip, another really good spot is Celery Bog in West Lafayette, just, 45, 50 minutes up the road from Zionsville here. It is just a bird hotspot. I saw more warblers there in, 2 hours on the trail than I've seen anywhere else ever. So that's just a good, these are some really, really reliable migration spots. I could have gone on, earlier I mentioned Bean Blossom Bottoms towards Bloomington. Here in Zionsville, Turkeyfoot Park is another great one. The Zion Nature Sanctuary is another great one. Holiday Park in downtown Indy, Cool Creek Park, we could go on and on and on. But if you want to narrow it down, here's a few good spots to look. The other thing that I would recommend doing is trying to join in on a bird walk somewhere. A lot of the organizations, and I know we've got some folks from Indiana Audubon on today, they post weekly roundups of different birding programs throughout the state, specifically in the Indy area. Amos Butler Audubon also posts things. Zionsville Parks and Recreation has a monthly bird walk, but migration season is here, so we've got a couple other ones coming up, including a bird photography walk if you want to get into photography a little bit more. One of my coworkers is a fantastic bird photographer, so she's going to take some people out. We have a warbler walk coming up as well, so a lot of really, really good options. Just saying earlier how I'm always birding. I just saw a Cooper's hawk fly by the window here in Town Hall in Zionsville. So there's always fun things to look for. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm more than happy. You can email me as well. If you're in here today, you should have my email address. Send them to me. You can send me pictures. I'm happy to help you try to key something out or just a description. And hopefully I catch you on a program sometime, or if you have questions, you will reach out. Thank you for giving me some of your Tuesday afternoon or whenever it is you watch this, if you're watching it later. And happy birding. Have a wonderful migration season. One question I see is any tips on how to spot them, time of day, type of habitat. So the time of day usually is, I would say the best luck is early in the morning or in sort of like late afternoon, early evening as the sun's going down. I think is a good time to go out looking for warblers. There's a couple websites. Indiana Audubon's good about posting when there's a migration alert. So a lot of migrating birds, or most migrating birds, fly at nighttime, and weather patterns will affect when they're moving. So they will post when there's a big night coming. That next morning is when you want to go out, and you will have a higher chance of finding these birds. But basically from about the second, third week of April through the second, third week of May you can count on heading out just about anywhere right now, but especially if you're going to hit a good forested park or a wetland, you're going to get a lot of warblers. There are some that'll be in prairie or meadow habitats as well. And then edges of those areas are really good to look for as well. But, you know, if you can get out first thing in the morning, that's a good time to go. So, all right. I will hang on for a couple minutes in case anybody has any other questions. But otherwise, thanks so much for giving me your time today. You guys are awesome. Happy birding. I hope you find some good stuff soon. Take care, everyone.